As I slid the motorcycle into the first floor garage, Yoshi jumped off the rear seat of the bike. When she pressed the switch on the steel column, the light of the ceiling of the garage turned on. That was all it took to reduce my fear. Yoshi began walking about on her own, looking at the building from several angles. "A magnificent building," she said, and then she began walking ahead of me. She climbed the stairs to the entrance on the second floor. Not having any other choice, I placed one foot on the stairs, but could go no further. As for Yoshi, she quite quickly climbed the stairs, opened the door without permission, and glanced inside. Ah, right. Now that I think about it, I flew out without locking the door. That means I'd left it unlocked for several days, which was very careless of me. I was just looking up from the bottom of the stairs. It was pretty shameful, but I'm the one that experienced the fear. I'd say it's perfectly normal for an animal not to want to get any closer unless safety is ensured. How is it? Dark. Well, of course. And with that, Yoshi quickly went inside. I was afraid of being left at the bottom of the stairs, so I rushed after Yoshi. When I opened the entrance door, the inside was already lit with electricity. Yoshi stood straight next to the lamp switch, glancing around from the ceilings to the walls. Light is great. I felt calm just by being bright, not to the point of not knowing whether those creepy happenings were reality. When I was about to take off my shoes at the foyer, I saw that Yoshi's knee-high boots had already been taken off neatly. She may surprisingly be well-to-do, I thought, but then it struck me that, come to think of it, we haven't even properly introduced ourselves. "Hey, it's belated, but," I turned to Yoshi and said, "I go by Nagi online. My real name is Yamada Nagito. I'm a freshman at university this spring." She didn't turn around. She nodded and then said, "I'm Yoichi." "Isn't that a handle?" "Wrong. My surname is Mitsurugi. Not that it matters." Mitsurugi Yoichi. She continued being odd. She used her real name online and then didn't care for her surname. 5 is on the wall in the toilet. However, as if to say that it was a waste of time, she asked for that, and so I pointed to the far end of the second floor. Yoshi silently went there. Without hesitating, she opened the door, turned on the light, and peered in. I quietly followed. "Right? It looks like the letter 5, right? It's not a schema, right?" I said to Yoshi's back. "You know of words such as schema?" she replied as if being condescending. "Well, I mean, I am an occult maniac, and that was a lie. It was information I just received." In a state where you've received a specific set of information, when you see a meaningless figure, your brain follows the information to create a suitable schematic. That is schema in cognitive science, but this is without a doubt 5. Even I see it that way. Yoshi said, not caring for my words, as she traced her fingers over the engraving. Well, it wasn't like determining that it wasn't schema solved anything. If anything, it made things worse. If this was truly a deliberately written 5, then someone wrote that in this house. Or rather something, and that was in the house. 6 was near the bath. Having finished observing thing 5, Yoshi went across the hall to the bathroom with the toilet, turned on the light, and opened the door. She placed her face right next to the symbol engraved in the windowsill. When I followed behind Yoshi, I smelled something odd. Truth be told, it had been bothering me since I met Yoshi, but now that I was in an enclosed space with her, it became clear. "Are you wearing some sort of perfume?" Yoshi wordlessly shook her head. "No, but you, this smell." And then I realized what that smell was. I'd smelled it in rooms during middle school. A sour, nose-curdling smell, as if something was rotting. I totally understand this is a rude thing to ask a girl." I pinched my nose as I asked, "When did you last take a bath?" And then Yoshi turned around and looked at me quizzically. And then she looked at the ceiling. When she seemed like she was searching through distant memories, I had a bad feeling. You have to think about it? I don't quite remember, but maybe last month? What the hell? Take a bath. A bath! This is a bathroom. That's not what I mean. Do you not take showers, clean your hair? What does that have to do with this number going down? Yoshi seemed completely bewildered as she asked me, but come on, I'd heard about dirty girls, and I know French royalty were famous for never taking a bath, but this is contemporary Japan. Do high school girls that don't take a bath for a month exist? What you say lacks reason, she said flatly, and then peered closely at the windowsill again. It was without a mistake 6, and then she turned around and asked, how about 7? She really had no interest in anything other than the paranormal. I sighed and helplessly guided her. I was on the landing toward the 3rd floor. That was where the middle-aged man I didn't know was standing during the suspected association game Yoichi had me play earlier. I didn't want to follow her there, so I just gestured, over there. Yoshi wordlessly climbed the stairs and then leaned toward the wall. That looks like 7 too, right? However, Yoshi didn't immediately answer. Instead, taking a mini light from her pocket, shined it at the letter 7, and looked all around it. Was something wrong? This is certainly 7, but odd. What's odd? I was about to ask. Suddenly, Yoichi vomited. She didn't do anything cute, like place a hand to her mouth in an effort to hold back, but rather standing tall with her arms folded, she boldly vomited, which definitely made me take a step back. Used to vomiting, that's how it seemed, and I completely saw it through. Dripping vomit, sparkling intestinal fluid, and the remnants of the orange juice she'd been drinking. What was with her? Doesn't take baths, takes vomits out in the open, and loves the occult and wears coats during the spring, a psychotic girl. However, I finally noticed that the psychotic girl did seem to be struggling a bit. Hey, are you alright? I ran to her and began rubbing her back, and she powerlessly nodded, then wiped her mouth. There was vomit on the landing, but she resumed conversing as if nothing had ever happened. I thought it was strange, since when you wrote about your post, I wonder why the countdown began from 7. Huh? Normally countdowns should start from 10 or 9. How should I know? I mean, ghosts are scary because you don't know what they're thinking. How would a human like me know why there's something like that could begin counting from 7? Wrong. The paranormal have no rules, but the other side has intentions as befitting of the other side. Yoichi said as she climbed the stairs. I had no choice but to follow. As if to say there must be a 8 or a 9 somewhere, Yoichi turned on the lights to the 3rd floor and began peering at the walls. Her posture as she crawled about on all fours, scampering along the walls, was both creepy and comical. Afterwards, Yoichi began mumbling to herself and didn't respond to me, so I gave up and went back to the 2nd floor. I poured water from the sink next to the toilet into a bucket and threw a rag in. After all, this is my house, and while I couldn't forget the hollow face of the middle-aged man I saw at the family restaurant, I tried not to think about it and cleaned up the vomit. Ugh, why does vomit smell so bad? Somehow it always entices you to vomit too. And it was irritating that the one who vomited seemed to not care at all, as if it was obvious that it would be my job to clean after her. Hey, do you not eat? There's only liquid in this, I said with a bit of a nasty tone. But Yoichi, who'd come back down from the 3rd floor, simply mumbled that there was no 8 or 9 anywhere. I snapped at her totally depressed reaction. I said there was none, but she ignored my comment and began looking on the walls on the 2nd floor. Half exasperated, I watched over her as I went down to the 2nd floor with the rag and bucket. Then I looked at the clock and asked her, Hey, are you alright being out at this hour? Of course, that was pretty belated, given that it was almost 3 a.m. If I were her parents, I'd be beside myself with anger. I hope you called home before coming out at this hour. I mean, I know it's my fault this is happening, but parents are always worried. I always thought my parents were annoying when I was at home, but once you go away, you feel gracious for it. However, she wasn't listening to my lecture. I noticed that she was completely immobile, staring at a single point. "What is it?" I asked, but Yoichi didn't move. She stood still, frozen like a mannequin. I stood behind Yoichi and looked where she was looking. That was where Yoichi had vomited, and was exactly where the middle-aged man was standing in my imagination that only I knew about. "Wait a second. Who are you doing a staring match with?" When I placed a hand on her shoulder, she twitched as if a curse had been lifted, and then she whispered ever so softly, "I see." When she turned around, her face was filled with joy. I could tell by the slight blush creeping into her pale face that she was excited. "Hey, did you notice?" "What?" But Yoichi didn't respond, instead turning on her heel and heading toward the foyer. Hey, wait. Let's get out." She quickly put on her deep black boots and then walked straight out of the entrance. I hurriedly put on my sneakers and chased after her. I tried not to look inside as I turned off the light, closed the door, and remembered to lock it this time. I stuck close by Yoichi as she staggered down the stairs. When we walked nearer where the motorcycle was parked inside the garage, Yoichi looked up at the building once more and said, "This building is very interesting." "What are you talking about?" "Under the stairs to the 3rd floor, there's a meaningless space." That moment I felt chills travel down my spine. I see. The eeriness that I'd felt all along about this house, I finally understood it. Indeed, it has always felt like something was odd about this house, and that was the area under the stairs which I could never reach. You couldn't enter the space under the stairs from either the outside or inside of the house. You hear about places that don't open sometimes. This was similar in that we didn't know what was inside. And look at this. Yoichi pointed at the mailbox by the stairs in front of the 1st floor. My full name was written on a piece of paper the size of a business card, and 3 lines had been carved in as if to overwrite my name. It was unmistakable. The countdown continued. Yoichi placed her face almost right onto the engravings and mumbled happily, "This place is real." But I said with a hollow voice, "I'm at my limit." The new apartment was fantastic. The pretty, clean flooring, the new wallpaper, the sterilized unit bath. It wasn't right comparing it to that house where the previous inhabitants' remnants drifted everywhere, but I definitely learned that it wasn't right to skimp on housing expenses. This was even further from the university, but houses were nearby. I could walk to a convenience store and there were plenty of streetlights. This apartment, which was brightly lit even at night, was introduced to me by Karasu. From what I heard, one of Karasu's acquaintances was the landlord for this apartment, and she was renting a room here too. It annoyed me a bit. The room was simply a warehouse, a place to put paranormal cursing equipment apparently for her, but I couldn't complain. Rent rocketed to 50,000 yen, but it was 6 tatami, 1K with a loft and a unit bath, so it was extremely cheap for the area. It had been 1 week since I looked at that paranormal house with Yoichi. Right after noon on a Sunday, on a rare day with no part-time work and no lectures. I opened the window and took in the comfortable breeze as I sprawled out in the empty room. A previous week had passed by quickly. First, I cried to my big sister and borrowed some money, and immediately moved here. I didn't want to enter that house ever again, and it was expensive having to hire people, but it was worth it. Furthermore, this apartment's walls were so thin that you would almost instinctively want to pick up your neighbors' ringing phones, which made it feel like you were among living people. And you could greet people in the hallways, and if you opened the windows, you could hear the lackadaisical voice of the bamboo pole merchants. Basically, this place was overflowing with life. For me, that was extremely important, as I'd been drained of mental energy to the extremes. I required the comfort of living amongst people. I never met Yoichi again. That night, I gave her a lift to the family restaurant and parted ways. Everything about her was a mystery other than the fact that she was a high school student and that her real name was Mitsurugi Yoichi. I spoke with her a bit as I escaped to the train station, but I never found out what was going on with that house. She didn't try to explain, and I wasn't in any hurry to ask. However, I had a strange conviction that something bad was there. Every night I heard something eerie, and I even ate a countdown. Whatever that means. But mostly I believed that it was because of Yoshi's one phrase, "This place is real." That this was not a place that I could deal with. I immediately thought that. If you think about it that way, she was why I was able to make the decision to place myself in such a peaceful place, but it was true what they say, that when the blade is no longer to your throat, you regain your curiosity. Now that it was all in the past, I was truthfully somewhat curious. What did she notice? What was the countdown? What is Yoichi anyways? It was hard to explain, but she seemed different from just an occult maniac. It wasn't like she was getting a thrill out of coming close to danger, but rather she seemed to have no instinct telling her to avoid dangerous areas. In other words, it was hard to explain her as anything but someone wanting to die. Whenever she said something, it felt like the world I believed and lived in was about to crumble apart. Sometimes I would take a peek at Ikagubuchi, but Yoichi never appeared in a thread. And of course, no one reacted to the thread I'd started, and it had been buried deep into the point where I didn't want to revive it. Krishna descended upon various threads, but he never touched them in my or Yoichi's case. That was real, I wanted to write, but I had no means of proving myself, and I myself felt fuzzy about it, so I kept myself to an ordinary life. Indeed, daily life continued. An increased living expense and an abundance of light and heat. My scholarship was insufficient, so I began working part-time at an Italian restaurant near the train station. I wanted to pay back the moving funds that I'd borrowed from my big sis too, so I started working whenever I had no lectures. My city survival began as I worked myself to exhaustion and flung a tired smile everywhere. A week flew by, and it was that sort of day. My first university and lecture in a while had just ended, and I was stuffing my textbooks into a bag when I realized a girl I recognized was staring at me. She was short, yet her breasts were big enough to notice through her clothing. Her hair was cut straight like a Zashiki Warashi, and her face resembled that of a young middle schooler, matching her rib-framed glasses. "Who's that?" I stared right back at her, and she cleared her throat once, and then came over. She started taking something out of her pocket, then put it back. I saw that it was some sort of paper. She walked to me, standing straight and still, and in the end never took out that piece of paper. She had a bit of a vexed expression as she glared at me, although her babyish face made it lewd as its bite, then clicked her tongue and then turned away. "Hey!" I couldn't stop myself from calling out to her. "What do you want? Speak up." The straight-haired girl turned back around and said, "Idiot." Idiot? Despite being mild-mannered, I wasn't one to stand being insulted by a girl I'd never met before. "Why are you being so rude? What's your name? What grade are you?" I asked, but she simply snapped back, "Shut up. It's your fault to begin with." And then she pointed her small index finger at me. "It's because of scum like you that these things keep happening like this. Learn your place, fool." "Fool? You?" After that, she rapidly asked me, "Do your shoulders ache? Do your ears ring? Are you able to sleep at night?" Was she some sort of doctor's apprentice? Did this university even have a medical college? While I was bewildered, the girl finally pulled out the piece of paper from her pocket. She stuck it under my nose. I had no time to take it as she ran off like a rabbit, and by the time I picked it up, she'd already left the classroom. The hell was that? No one was left in the classroom by then, so I looked at the piece of paper I held. It was like a handmade business card. It just read, Beatnik Research Club President Kurimoto Shina, and had the location of the Beatnik Research Club situated on the western wing. That night I saw a dream. In my dream, I was still living in that house, the old 3-story mountain cottage by the riverbank. There I was looking at myself. It was like I had spiritually departed from my body and was floating in space, and was gazing upon me living my life. The me down there showed no signs of noticing me and continued living normally. It seemed I was watching a bit of the past. I was living carefree, as I hadn't learned of the fear of the noises at night. Hey, come on, stop at this house, I wanted to tell him, but as a person just drifting in a dream, there was nothing I could do. All I could do was observe. Eventually I noticed that Yoichi was sitting next to me. The two of us were sitting together on the old sofa I'd picked up after moving. The two of us didn't speak to each other, instead just going on with our lives individually. I was yawning as I watched a TV while she was just quietly reading an old book. It was just a dream, so I was free to make up any situation it wanted, but I still thought it was odd. However, I also accepted that if I were to live together with her, neither of us would really interfere with the other. Eventually, the me down there got bored of the TV and proceeded to stretch, wash his face, and brush his teeth. I thought about studying a bit, but instead I just immediately went to sleep. As I observed myself as an outsider, I realized that I was a pretty boring person. I boasted that I would turn the fortunes of my family's lumber business that was downtrodden, and had departed Shizuoka in opposition to my father and big sister, failed to get into the seminar wanted, and wandered occult sites. Plus I hadn't even written a single letter to my mother, who I'd promised to send letters to after coming to Tokyo. Finally, I'd moved into a haunted house because of low rent and run into a psychotic girl. I wanted to slap myself. As I sighed and glared, I quickly curled up in my bedroom. Even though Yoichi was there, it seemed I could not see her as I turned off the light. Yoichi seemed to notice the light had gone off as she closed her book and stared off into space. I'd floated down to Yoichi, thinking I'd turn the light on for her. It's about time. I had a bad feeling from Yoichi's words. And then, in the darkness, with only moonlight illumination, I heard that sound. From somewhere, the sound of something being scraped. An ominous melody ringing across the border connecting this world and the other. As if something was trying to crawl out of a sealed dimension. As I heard that sound, my body slowly froze. It was like watching those supernatural shows on TV where they set up a camera in rooms that ghosts are rumored to appear. This dream, isn't it bad? I need to wake up as soon as possible, because if I stay here like this, I would see the something that was engraving numbers into this house. I frantically tried to wake up. I waved my limbs around trying to touch something, but I could not wake myself from the dream. It was like my body had been caught by some black hand seeping out of a different world. Feeling the despair of having locked into a room with no exit within the dream, only my panting echoed, and suddenly I found myself next to Yoichi. On the old leather sofa, Yoichi and I were embracing each other. As if I were trying to stain both of my palms with Yoichi's body temperature, I played with her body. That was my wish, and yet it wasn't. I mean, of course I had some interest in girls as a simple 18-year-old boy, but my lusting wasn't this twisted. I wasn't the type to release my sexual lust by turning myself into an unseen existence. I was pretty sure I had that much reason in me anyways. However, Yoichi showed no signs of fear. If anything, she was in a state of ecstasy. Her expression was dangerous. I felt my reason making sounds as it broke apart. I licked Yoishi's skin. I groped her breast through her clothes. I lusted over her soft body with the tips of my fingers. I pulled up her long skirt, showing her white thighs. Yoishi's eyes were barely open. Her lips were slightly parted, and I could see her white teeth. Stop, stop, stop. I screamed from within my body, but I couldn't restrain my abnormal, extreme lusting. However, the moment I placed a hand on her white wrists, I almost screamed. My arms were not ones I'd become accustomed to seeing, but rather were long and thin, if anything like that of an aged man. Those sleeves were gray and worn. I was wearing an old suit. I felt like I faintly smelled some cologne. I stretched out my trembling arms and felt my face, my nose, my lips, and what I felt was hideously not mine. It was definitely that of someone else, and I knew whose it was. Him. That man existing at the edge of my vision. And finally my face tilted against my will. My face pointed towards the window ahead, toward the moonlight, and my eyes locked with the man covering Yoichi. That instant, I lost consciousness. Along with incredible trembling, I woke up. It was my new apartment, with the abnormally bright lighting from the lamp. To my side was a coffee table, with the empty box of the convenience store meal I had just eaten, and an unfinished bottle of oolong tea. Near my pillow, textbooks and notebooks for university had been tossed about. There was a cheap curtain between me and the sash to the small veranda, and it swayed a bit from the night breeze coming through a gap in the sash. I breathed deeply. My heart was still pounding. I came home from work, ate a bit, and then had fallen asleep. Fuck off with scaring me. I felt malice towards no one in particular and grabbed the bottle. I gulped down the third or so that was left of the oolong tea. I felt incredibly thirsty, and even the lukewarm oolong tea tasted delicious. When I finished, I felt a bit calmer, and I scratched my hair as I exhaled sharply. Calm down, just a dream. It was just 2 weeks ago. It's not surprising to have some fear still in my heart. That's why I saw that dream, that's all. I mumbled to myself in an effort to persuade myself, but my heart didn't stop pounding. I could still feel Yoishi's soft body in my hands. Then I realized that something was ringing on my head. It was like a phone from next door, like a cell phone in my pocket was still ringing. A quiet but definite warning sound. What's bothering you? I looked around. New white wallpaper surrounded me, and there was just a spacious, vacant room that I hadn't been able to fill with furniture. Nothing had changed between before and after I'd slept. However, the bell inside my head kept ringing. What is it? I stood up and looked around the room again. There was nothing out of the ordinary. The after effects of the scary dream were just bothering me, that's all. I was trying to think that when I noticed it. Next to the wall was a ladder leading to a small loft. The lighting for the loft was different, so it was slightly dark there. Just then I felt something cold travel down my spine. Why did I pick a place with a loft? That dark area where it felt like someone might jump out at me from gave me bad thoughts. However, it felt like the warning inside me was directed straight at the loft. I mustered the courage to look up, and the warning sound grew louder. I swallowed once and turned on the light to the loft next to the ladder. I placed a foot on the ladder, climbing it one step at a time, and then I willed myself to look into the loft. Of course, there was no one in the loft. The only thing there was a cheap sleeping bag I'd bought instead of a blanket, and a number of books that were scattered about. Haha. I breathed with relief and was just about to climb back down when I noticed it. On the other side of the sleeping bag, at the furthest wall, I saw something. Wounds. 2 lines had been violently drawn. I screamed a silent scream as I tumbled from the ladder. I made a loud sound as my knee and shoulders struck the ground, but I didn't care. Somehow I managed to grab my wallet and cell phone and I jumped out the door. Not lines. Those weren't lines. That was... 2. The number 2. I'd even moved, but the countdown continued.